once you do that, oh my goodness, it's like the floodgates open up and all of a sudden there's this line of communication where the idea was like, thank you. I've been waiting for you to just look at me.
Oh my God. So powerful. I'm obsessed with this episode and this topic.
Hello, fam. Welcome in to the Out of Our Minds pod. Today, you're in for a treat. We are diving into a very expansive conversation on really the power of your ideas and this transformative way that you can start to relate to your ideas. The ideas that you receive are so much more than just a thought. They are their own being that wants to manifest into the material realm through the channel of you. So if you're getting revved up by what I'm already speaking into existence with this podcast, you're going to feel into even deeper resonance with what we dive into in this episode. By the end of this episode, you're going to have a completely new perspective on how you think of an idea, the way that you respond to your ideas, and honestly, the way that you live life, because your life is literally one big continuous fun experiment with creation. And we are always receiving these beautiful ideas where we are meant to play, we're meant to create, and you are not going to relate and respond to that creation process the same after listening to this. So let's kick off this beautiful conversation. We'll get right into it. We'll leave some surprises for you guys. We're not going to share too much on what we'll talk about, but let's start this conversation with Bella. I'll throw it back to you. I want to start with really painting this picture of seeing and understanding our ideas as an energetic being that we receive for a particular reason. I'll leave that there and I want you to dive into this just to kick off this beautiful conversation.
Yes. I think the easiest way to understand this and to add another reason why you're listening to this, of what you're going to get out of it, is it doesn't really feel good when you're in a state of being where you're like, I have so many ideas, but I never do anything with them. It's kind of a feeling where it's like you're getting these like jolts, but they just like fizzle out and die. And it starts to just like weigh on your vessel. The reason that that's happening is because we're all swimming in this energetic soup, and there's all this energy around. There's different vibrations and frequencies, and your vessel holds also its own frequency. And you can imagine that essentially you are this walking magnet that is just going to pull in exactly the correct thing for it. And when it comes to the concept of ideas, that's exactly what's happening, is your vessel, through its energy centers and through the literal like magnet that's inside of you, is going to be a match for certain ideas, visions, concepts, right? Desires, etc. And in the world of ideas, you can think of these as like little sparks that are really just the fuse, and you are meant to then carry it forward to turn it into something. And that's why just sitting in the world of ideas kind of ends up falling flat, because they're meant to be carried through your vessel. Because if you think about swimming through that soup, it's like then a little opening opens up in, let's say, an energy center of yours, like for example the crown, which governs inspiration, and it's going to pick up one that is exactly coded for your being, for your uniqueness, what you're meant to create. And maybe you know the reason why, or maybe you don't. And that's why there's this sacredness of just the ideation and inspiration process. And they really are these gifts that you can think about, like the universe is sending you, or is like leaving, like swimming around in the field around you. And your aura has its own energetic frequency that when it meets up with something that's a match, same thing when you meet a person and you just know you're meant to be friends, there's an energetic resonance. The same thing is the case for ideas. And that's why if you always deny, and shove them down and say, no, I can't do that. No, that's not for me, you're going to feel out of whack, because you are turning off the zing of life force that is literally trying to get to you because it chose you to create it because of your unique blueprint and self.
Oh, so good. I'm getting so many pings as I'm listening to you too about we have touched on this and we actually totally forgot about this when we were recapping what we're going to dive into in this episode. But remember we were talking about how when you step into a state of embodiment, like for example, someone who is in the embodiment of I am a business owner instead of the embodiment of I'm trying to be a business owner. I'm trying to post my services on
Yes.
Instagram. When you step into that embodiment, you are really allowing a different energy to flow into your energy centers. And with that different stream of energy comes the different ideas that exist in different
Yeah.
frequencies. And if you guys are like, what the fuck
Yes.
is she talking about? What I'm meaning here in the simplest terms is that when you expand yourself and step into a being that you know yourself to be deep within and really push past the comfort bubble of who you think you are, like the ego self, and you feel into that really expansive soul self, the limitless self, you start receiving the ideas that are more expansive. And this is why people like Nikola Tesla or Einstein are living in this world of limitless possibility. So the ideas are coming into their energy centers saying, ding, 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 we have a match, a being that can actually hold the bigness of this idea. Because that
Yeah.
being over there doesn't even see this as a possibility.
Yes. I'm so glad you brought that up because this is where you see that the ideas are not just ideas. They're this piece of the puzzle of your journey, right? And what Nikki is speaking to is as soon as you claim a vision or you just say, you know what, I don't know how this is going to happen, but I've received the clarity, the intuitive guidance that I'm meant to explore this goal this year, for example. Just in imagining that then you have been like staring at the pool in front of you and you like have your floaties on and you've never gone swimming before and you've like read all the theory and you're like, okay, I see the pool, I'm going to dive in. And then you actually just dive in and then you are literally, I wouldn't say forced, but it's like in this analogy, you have to learn how to swim because you're in it. And in this version of it, what's happening is you then become a match for the next piece of the puzzle. And that's why if you're always worried about step 7, right, you won't even take step 1 because you realize that the next steps are revealed. And that's exactly what happens when you do the uncomfortable thing of actually claiming the new identity or the vision that you want. And then with patience and with time, and honestly, it happens pretty freaking instantaneously, you will literally start to receive the next step. And it's like you literally have to do it step by step in order for the next one to be revealed. Like imagine that your flashlight only goes a foot in front of you. If you want to know what's 2 feet in front of you, you need to take another step.
Okay, these are two things that we're highlighting here that are so important that I just want to almost simplify and backtrack what you and I just touched on. There's two big things that are sticking out that I really want you guys to kind of sink your teeth into. Number one, if you are on a journey of knowing that you're here to create big things, allow yourself to already be the being that you would envision at the finish line, right? Like how we have stepped into this role as being creators, podcasters, like media company owners, right? Like we have embodied that. And it has been this initiation of allowing ourselves to claim that even before the physical results were in front of us. And this is such a life hack because when you do that, that is when you receive the ideas that match up to that energetic state of being. So I just want to highlight that because that's really important
Yeah.
for you guys to give yourself the freedom to embrace the bigness of yourself and who you know yourself to be deep down, even if it's just like the inner knowing of your innate wholeness and abundance, so that the ideas can find, you know, that landing pad. And then the second thing that Bella is pointing out is that you receive the first idea, the ego is going to think you need every single freaking step. And this is just such an important thing that I want to re-highlight and throw it back in, almost like throw it back to you guys to really think about. What is that one idea that you have received that maybe your ego was thinking, oh, we need step 1, step 2, and all the way to step 7, like how Bella was saying. And how can you actually trust that that is the idea that's going to set you on a journey of unraveling this path in front of you that you just need to start going? So, those two things are really standing out for me from the conversation of what we just dove into. And I wanted to highlight that so that you guys can start thinking about what is the bigness, the energy that you're ready to really fully embody if you haven't yet received the idea. And then two, if you have received the idea, how can you actually just start going and trust the process that is unfolding?
Yeah, the other thing that's coming to mind is emphasizing and giving a little bit more kind of like the science, if you will, of why you can trust the ideas and pings that you're getting, because like we've been saying, they're not random at all. And yes, there's the sense of like these things are different than just the like thoughts, the millions of thoughts that run through your mind, because an idea, especially if it's aligned for you, there's going to be a resonance to it and there's going to be a feeling that you get. And so I want you to reflect on for you what it feels like when you get not just an idea, but something that feels like you are drawn to it, whether that is through just being curious, whether that's you literally feel your physical body being like, I have to move toward this, or it's just like a little whisper that you get, or just like sounds right in your mind and you're like, okay, like that just really gets my logic brain on board. Like it feels so good to think about that. That is happening because of this process that we're highlighting, which is the resonance and the purposefulness of what you're receiving. And again, think back to that energetic soup that we're all swimming in, right? Imagine that the universe is sending out so many blasts of different concepts and ideas and visions, and the universe wants someone to create the most sustainable community, farming community that ever exists, and it's going to send that out. And there's a reason why Joni is the one who gets that idea.
I was going to say,
Bella,
shout out Joni, one of our masterminders.
Yeah, shout out Joni. Yes, from that example. Because Joni's blueprint is literally tuned to that. And it gets so down to the science that if you want to really understand this, it's like when you look at a human design body graph, you look at it through this lens of all the little channels and the gifts that are activated in the centers. They're literally like nodes, okay, that are processing information that we can't see. It's all subtle energetics in the unseen world and in like the quantum level, that your physical vessel is literally designed to interpret and translate to you as either an instinct, an intuition, an excitement, right? An emotional high, a thing that then is pinged into your body through a sensation and then urges you to do something with it. And I'm saying all this because it's literally not by accident. It's by design. So those ideas that you keep getting, and especially the ones that have a resonance to them, that is the universe handing you the way. It is handing you the strategy and the next thing. And so I want you to know that reflecting on those things that are coming up, doing that, and also remembering and starting to make this the question of, what if I'm getting this idea because it's proving to me that as I take the tiny micro step toward creating this idea into reality, I am actually going to reveal the magic and the skills that I've been looking for all along, right? The thing that I thought was out there is revealed to you by listening to and saying, you know what? Thank you, universe, for sending this to me. I must be receiving this because I am meant to do it.
I have a human design question for you. What you're saying is really resonating with, if an idea resonates with you on an energetic level, there will be some sort of signal that goes off. And what would you say is the one thing in human design that someone can learn about with their chart that will help them know if the idea is truly meant for them?
This is a really great question. Okay. To know if an idea is meant for you, across the board, universally, for every single person, there's some version of excitement, curiosity, interest, your body being pulled toward it, it sounding right in your mind. And I'm giving these examples because we all kind of feel different versions of that. The thing that is going to really help you to, as you move into the idea and to stay on the path, is going to be your authority. I'm going to force myself to only say that because there's other things coming to mind, but I'm going to keep it simple. Once you are in the arena, the thing that is going to help you course correct and keep going on your aligned path is going to be your authority, because it's literally meant for choice points and decision making. So the overall idea it doesn't necessarily have to fall into it makes me excited or I received a instinctive ping from my spleen to do it. It can kind of be more of like a generic universal curiosity point or thing that you want to call yourself toward. But when you are there and taking the chance on the thing and you have found resonance with something, your authority is going to help you to, at every single choice point, figure out where to go. So that's where you can figure out like, okay, do I want to do it like this or like this? Or waiting for that next ping to tell you who to reach out to make it happen. That's where your authority at choice points and forks in the road is essential. And is also something to trust of how the idea in the way that it's meant to be created will unfold. That's the number one thing. I have other stuff coming to mind, but I think that's like probably the most like tangible, useful one, is clarifying that like when it comes to then making decisions, big or small, about this thing that you've been led into, that's really where your authority comes in.
This is making so much sense too, because I'm an emotional authority. And even just like we were workshopping ideas for what we're working on inside of Ohm, and I knew within that I just wanted to return to almost like a baseline before making any big decisions about what I personally was wanting to do with a direction and acting on any ideas. And there is this like full body yes that happens inside of me that literally feels like, I've said this on mastermind calls, Christmas morning, like when you're a kid, that excitement. And what I just posted on the story of us finishing that working session, of going in on that idea that we received, it literally feels like this full body excitement. And you can just like check in with yourself at every part of the path if it still feels like that with every idea that you get. And that's just an example as an emotional. I'm sure you can share about it from a different perspective based on your authority, but I'm actually curious, what would you say is like an example of how that shows up for you?
Yeah, it's similar where this is where I'll like allude to sort of the second piece that I was going to say, which is still actually kind of tied to authority, but yes, 100% with what you're saying and asking is it's exactly when I feel it's so cut and dry. It's either yes or no because of the sacral authority. That's like, ooh, yes, I'm excited about that. Or like, I'm not into that. And it's that simple, especially when you've like flexed that muscle. It's like we're debating between, should we do it like this or should we do it like that? Okay, there's clearly this one, right? Because you just feel that pull toward it. And what I'll add here is this is where the secondary piece is understanding how each energy center in your body graph works, and particularly the ones that are colored in, because those are supporting voices in your intuition. And this is what I would call like authority stacking, is because yes, you have your one captain authority, which would be emotional or sacral or splenic or self-projected, whatever it is. But other defined centers are also a voice. So for me, I know that I also get those instinctive pings that mine are actually connected to my sacral. And so they literally feel like a voice that says, go do this right now. And it's matched up with the sacral power. And so that's my like secondary, like more stacked up authority and intuition voice speaking to me. So that's the second thing, is 1,000% is authority because that's the captain of the ship, but also look into all the other centers that you have colored in, because they speak each a different language, and that is going to make up the wholeness of how you receive essentially intel and like what to do next.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm actually like really loving this conversation because I feel like I'm stacking information on top of what I already was intuitively feeling and what was coming up for me. I'm going to be definitely diving into my chart and looking at what those centers are. Would you say that two centers that are connected, that is what makes it like an extra authority, or it's just a center colored in?
It's really just a center colored in, and there's a hierarchy of it. I'll just say it really fast because it's quick. But the channels thing is important to know, but I'm going to say that that's like tertiary to this. The order of operations in terms of if you look at a chart, if you're listening to this, I recommend this. Okay. Pull up your chart. If you don't have one, go to omis.com/human design or use whatever app you want. I don't care. Pull it up and look at your chart. The order of operations goes, if the emotional solar plexus is colored in, that's your authority. Okay. So the order goes like this, meaning if this one is colored in, it will be the top one. Emotional solar plexus, sacral, spleen, heart, G center connected to the throat, or crown connected to the mind. And if none of them are colored in, it's a reflector, which makes your authority lunar authority, which is essentially like 30-day cycle, and life is really going to show you the answer. That's the order. So you would basically put number one as, for the example, if you have the spleen colored in and the heart center colored in and the mind to the throat, the spleen is the captain, the heart is the secondary guy, and then the other two, I can't remember what I just said, but the other two are also going to be backup voices.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
So mine is emotional with the spleen. Do I have
Like yours
covered?
is like your emotion, because you're a generator, the sacral is also very important, but your captain is the emotional solar plexus, followed by the sacral, then the spleen. That's like the order for everybody. So it's like, that's why on any chart you can immediately tell what their authority is, because there's like an order of, it's semi goes by like the strength of them, not really, but it's like anyone who has an emotional solar plexus colored in, that's automatically your authority.
Right.
If you have your sacral colored in, that's your authority. And then it goes like in that order, and that's how the types are determined.
Okay, got it. Cool. Yeah,
So yeah,
definitely
just
go
focus
check out your
on
charts, guys.
Yeah, check out your chart, and just if any of that confused you, don't discard it. Just listen, just focus in on colored in energy centers. The colored in energy centers are also going to be speaking to you consistently. That is going to help you in terms of ideation, making decisions, etc. Your colored in defined centers are going to be speaking to you. So that's what you want to explore.
Beautiful. Okay, so now with this conversation, we want to give you guys some practical knowledge around viewing your ideas as entities and what this can actually do for your creation process. Belle and I have actually been leaning into this in our own journey of this really beautiful idea that we received for Ohm, which I'm like so freaking pumped about. And today we had this incredible working session where we have really applied and we've taken action with what we're going to share with you now on some ideas of how you can really form a relationship with the ideas and get to know it as an entity. So I love this idea. This is something that you actually taught me because this is something that Bella does with her clients, and it is so expansive. Like, I know you've worked with clients who are actually in the creation process, and you've done work with them of channeling their idea as an entity and speaking to it. So I actually want to ask you, how can someone apply this to their life, and like what are your general ideas around this, and how can we start to really call in the entity of our idea?
Yeah. So wait, before I answer that, I actually want to hear from you like why this has helped so much, because it also like has felt intuitive and feels like the right way to do it. Or
Yes.
like, if you will, if you know what I mean by that. So I actually want to have you tee it up more, because I'm also curious, like in your own experience, like how it had, like why it has had that impact.
Okay. So for me personally, in the past, when I used to receive an idea, I would make it so personal. And if in the past I was dealing with doubt or not feeling confident with my gifts, when I would receive an idea, I would make the idea about me. Like, I'm trying to think back to like years ago when I had an idea for something in my business, and there was so much fear and doubt around who I was as a being and my ability to carry this out. And the idea kind of got lost in my own illusions of self, if that's making sense. Like, I made it too much about me. And now, just the journey that we've been on and the journey I've been on in my own individual business, it's really seeing the ideas that I receive, whether it be like a modality or a step-by-step process on emotional alchemy, or an idea that we've received within Ohm that we've acted on this whole podcast. Now it's like, okay, this is an idea that is its own living, breathing entity. and it just wants to travel through me as the channel. And that is such a beautiful process of detaching from making the idea something about you. And it gives you this freedom
Mm.
to feel very non attached, but also very confident in knowing that it chose you and wants to move through you. And you can actually go through the process of creating and acting on that idea because now you get to speak to it. It's not like, oh, I need to clench my fist
Mm.
and think about how to carry this out. It's like, hey, come sit down at the table. Let me feel into who you are, what your energy is, what kind of personality you have, what your freaking sun, moon, and rising
Yeah.
is, and let me get to know you. And once you do that, oh my goodness, it's like the floodgates open up, and all of a sudden there's this line of communication where the idea was like, thank you. I've been waiting for you to just
Yeah.
look at me. Because we make it about us.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing that I'll just say. It really has made it a process of detachment.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it basically, this is how you align with how ideas actually work and like how and our role in them and how to actually make like your individuality and your authenticity land, but it's in service of this project or idea. So the basics of how this works is essentially, this is, for example, this is what I walked a client through who was writing a book and really wanted to just get some like fresh energy in the book writing process. Anybody that's written a book, like, you can probably relate to the fact that sometimes it feels just like clunky, especially if you're so focused on just the fact that like your fingers are writing words. Like, it's just going to feel very exhausting. And this could be for any project, right? Like, of how you're describing when you become very attached to the result or how it's going and it's become way too personal. So essentially, this would look like, if this is the first time, I would be guiding someone to drop into a meditative state. You've done a bunch of breathing, right, for 5 minutes. You're in a parasympathetic state. And you're going to be called to some scene in nature and life that just pops into your mind. It's usually like a forest or a beach or something. And you call forward out of a clearing the entity of your idea. If it's a book, right, you're visualizing this book. And while this is happening, you really want to let your imagination run of like, for this client I did it with, it was like she saw the book was like sparkling and had like fairy dust all over it. And she was like seeing how when she opened the book, there was like another thing inside of it. And it's like, you really let your imagination run wild there. But you essentially are at first meeting the entity. And right here is where you've detached and you're realizing that an idea, a thing, a project is coming through you. And now you are turning it into questions about how to serve this thing. So asking this book, first of all, like, do you have a name? Should I reference you as something? Maybe not. Just book is fine, whatever, right? And you notice like its mood, its tone, and right away you're just going to start feeling like these new ideas come, quote unquote, out of nowhere. And you can get really specific and ask like, how should I structure the chapters? What is the goal of this? What's the why? Who is this meant for? And in this visual where you're in this space and it's like the idea and the project is in front of you, right there, you are in correct relationship to any and all visions and ideas. Sorry. Sarah farted and it's so smelly that I just like inhaled it.
You almost just threw up on
My
your
dog's
mic.
my dog's farts are so intense. Oh my God. I was like, hold it together, hold it together. Sorry.
You need to get one of those
Jesus Christ.
fans, like a hand fan.
Literally. Oh my God. Okay. As I was saying, right there, you are in the correct relationship with this idea. And this is, again, how ideas and everything really works, right? If you keep this in mind and you like re-listen to everything we just said, it's like, oh, it's literally its own energetic entity. And you can have so much fun with this because basically it's like your business itself could be its own entity. Your relationship could be its own entity. It's anything that you want to do to bring more detachment and therefore more flow and fun. And then just watch how it feels like all of the ideas are already there and they will hit you exactly when you need. And the client that I did this with, she's a projector with splenic authority. And she was saying how when she met the book told her, you will be notified. And this was like for like new ideas or how to do the marketing or whatever. And it aligned perfectly with her authority, which was splenic, which really kind of acts as like, you can think about it as like a notification that just like drops in out of nowhere. And so her process with the book was to tune into that and to let that tell her like when to change something or when to add a chapter or whatever it is. And I really encourage you to like make it fun and interesting. And you could even make a script of like you're tuning into the highest expression of, for us, it would be like of the Om entity or the Om audience and asking it questions. And to me, it just makes it so fun. And it's the best when someone's never done this before because you're like, oh, I can do that. And then all of a sudden it's way more fun. You can bring anybody in too. You want to channel Alan Watts while you work on it? Fucking invite him into the forest, right? You have a dog that passed away and you want to channel his love because of the stories you're telling? Bring him into the room. And all of a sudden you are literally co-creating in the real way that the universe has designed us to create because you're inviting in the energetic entities that now the individual part is you're the vessel that's going to make it come through. The idea of the book chose you because you've got these quirky little things and this thing over here and this past experience that is going to flavor what's coming through and bring it onto the page or the screen in the exact way that is meant to come through.
Oh, this is so good. I'm like getting a visual of how when someone receives an idea, this part of the process of connecting in with the channeling it as an entity is where you literally extend out the phone line and say, hey, I've received you. Now let's fucking do this. And I think where a lot of people get hung up, and this is like the new paradigm way, you're not doing it alone. A lot of people get hung up when they think that they need to clench their fists and execute the idea all on their own. Like, it's so funny because someone can look at anyone with a business from an outside perspective that doesn't have all of this insider knowledge on connecting to the unseen and be like, damn, how did they execute that idea? Bitch, we're not doing this alone.
Literally, we have a whole team, okay?
Yes, yeah. We have,
and not the kind that you think.
And they are volunteers, happy volunteers.
Yes, I was gonna say these are unpaid employees.
Except Shivam. Shout out Shivam. We love you.
Yeah, except Shivam. Shout out to our editor. He is paid and he's fantastic.
But seriously, like understand that your idea wants to help you. Like it wants to come into form. It wants to be in the 3D just as much you want to experience it in the 3D because that's what it came here to do. Just like how your soul came into this world to be like, wow, let me condense into this 3D form to experience myself. The idea is of such a high frequency that it is in the unseen, and you are the channel that condenses it into form to experience it in the 3D. And this is what people that are masters of the 3D are masters at. People that have a lot of earth in their chart, or just those that are very honestly logical, have this beautiful ability to condense things into the 3D world. And it's funny because you can learn about spirituality and be like, let me just spend all of my time in the unseen. And that's where you'll find people that are too in the feminine, too in the energetics. But it's like, nah, bitch, condense that into a 3D form, bring it into the 3D, and understand that that process of condensing it is actually something that you're facilitating and channeling, not just doing it on your own. And this is just such a liberating thing that, yes, the detachment part of what I was sharing, but also I'm realizing even more like how important it is to have this relationship with the idea because it makes you realize how held you are throughout this process.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about, wanted to add with this is like kind of how this approach helps to really like delete the idea of competition or like comparison, because I think a lot of people will get tripped up on thinking somebody else already has this idea, or there's already 40 million podcasts that exist. Like, why am I going to start one, or whatever that business idea is. And did you ever have like classes in middle school or high school where it was like they gave you like a prompt or guidelines or like a rubric, right, of like this project that you had to create? And then everybody like went off and created the project, and everybody made something different, and everybody got the same instructions, right? The same initial thing. And the same thing is happening in adulthood, especially in business and entrepreneurship and any part of life where you're being called to create something. Is like I was saying, you're swimming in the soup of possibility. You're going to get this like instruction almost from the universe of like, here's a project that I have, right? And it is guaranteed to be different, because it's just, it literally you can't compare. Like, it's fucking impossible when everybody is going to channel it differently. And that's why, like, yeah, there's tons of car companies out there because everybody makes a car differently. There's a bunch of podcasts out there because no one can replicate another person's voice. It's literally impossible. So you will start to see that this idea of like competition from lack, or like comparing yourself to other people, is just going to be freaking deleted from your mind, because it's not even about you, but you also have been chosen for this. And you will actually see even more like uniqueness and like a very quote unquote like different, never been done before idea being formed through, or sorry, form coming through your idea, when you actually detach from the personal part of it, because then it's like you get out of your own way and the super unique thing happens. Not because you're trying to be so different, because it just is like guaranteed to unfold that way.
Right. There's almost like a fear that can block us from the uniqueness of the idea that actually wants to come through, where you're looking at all of the other things in the world that work. And I think this is what happens in the coaching industry, the spiritual space. It's like people are looking at like all these people with the wide brimmed hats and the Instagram vibe that they have, and they're like, this is what works. Like, I have an idea to create and to
Right.
post online, but this is what works. And I feel like the age that we're stepping into is really claiming your uniqueness. And this is why we talk so much about individuality and human design, because the ideas want to come through your individual vessel, just like how Bella's saying, to be expressed by your individuality. And it's so beautiful to see it that way, because it's true. Like, there's literally no such thing as competition when you understand the uniqueness that every being holds. It's like the saying of
Yeah.
people walking down like a water bottle aisle and seeing all the different waters, but yet they're still all in business. And I want you guys to
Yes.
reflect
Yeah.
on, yes, maybe someone could have sat us down when we were starting this podcast and been like, hey, you do realize that the podcast industry is freaking booming and that it's oversaturated and that there's too many spiritual podcasts out there. But look, some reason you're plugged into this one. And you're probably not going to listen to 1,000 other spiritual podcasts today. You're going to listen to this and maybe one other, or maybe none at all. And that's fine. But that just goes to show that there's a reason you're connected to us right now. And you have that exact same unique blueprint that others want to get a taste of through the channel of your ideas.
Yes, 1,000%. Okay, I have a question for you. I'm really curious what you would view as when someone is more so feeling stuck in that only ideas phase, and it feels like they can't seem to move it down the assembly line. What would you have them be curious about in terms of the stories or beliefs that are going to maybe block that life force from flowing through them, that they could start to explore to help unkink that hose?
Yeah, this is such a solid question because this happens a lot. And I was actually just working with a client, and this was the exact experience that she was having and has been having for a long time. And if you're having a lot of ideas and you're not acting on them, but yet you're like chilling and you're fine in life and you're like, yeah, whatever, I'm like still doing this in life, I feel fulfilled, that's fine. But the subconscious work comes in when you start to notice that there's a sense of suffering arising with the way that something is manifesting in your reality and the way that you're relating to that experience. So essentially, what we did with this experience and the suffering that this was causing was I got really curious about asking her what she was making this mean about her and the underlying story that was under the action of her getting an idea and not taking action on it. And what we discovered that yes, you can look at that and be like, oh, it's overwhelmed, like not being in the masculine enough, but there's a deep rooted identity around who this powerful soul is as a being, which allows them to relate to their ideas in a specific way. So let me break that down even simpler. Essentially, what we got to the bottom of is that she had this deep rooted identity that she wouldn't be able to handle the execution. She couldn't actually follow through with it. And that she's lazy and there's no way that she can actually make this happen. And when you get into that, you start to uncover the subconscious thoughts and the actions and the identities that are driving the way that we will relate to the receival of an idea. So once you clear that and you recognize, oh my goodness, I am using past experiences where I simply did not know any better about the power that I hold to define the way that I can execute and carry out an idea, that is when you access freedom. So we went into it, we dissolved it, we revealed the higher perspective and really saw how powerful she is as a being. And we also had this really beautiful experience of her redefining the story she was telling about her not going and doing the full execution of an idea. And it was beautiful because I asked her, I'm like, what do you now think that actually means from this higher perspective of understanding how powerful you are? Did you actually want to execute on that idea? Like, was it the right idea? And she said to me, she's like, no, I actually didn't want to execute on it. It just wasn't, it didn't feel right. And we reframed the whole story of I'm lazy and can't execute on ideas to, oh my goodness, I'm such a powerful being that receives so many beautiful ideas. And I'm so powerful that I even lean in and test out some of them and decide it's not for me. And that is such a different way to perceive that experience. There's a higher perspective and then there's a limiting perspective, because I too, as a 3 in my human design profile, I like to experiment and to try things out in my life. And if we hold a story on us having a lot of ideas and not acting on them as something that makes us a failure, we're going to get the right idea and start to take our whole past story of, oh, I'm someone who doesn't execute on ideas, and apply that to the idea that actually feels really good for us. So what I wanted to do with this client was really clear up the perception she was holding on the experience and start to reveal the deeper identity around who she is as a being. And it's so funny because this whole story around being lazy and someone who actually can't execute is literally just a story. And this is something that I had to realize in my own journey too. And this is something that my mentor would always ask during sessions, and it's something that I use in sessions as well. She would ask me, if I were to cut you open and find a manufacturing label, which I'm pretty sure this comes from Peter Crone, if I were to cut you open and find a manufacturing label, would I find a label that says your name, the date that you were born, and so-and-so, lazy, incapable? The answer is clearly absolutely no. And you start to understand that the identity you hold is literally just a string of words that you've decided is who you are. So that's what I would do in that situation, and just start to reveal what that story is, what the root identity is, and start to understand that you are this limitless being that can literally do anything. And once you tap into that, not only your perception on your past changes, but the way that you interact with your ideas changes. And that's freedom and magic all in one.
Oh my God. So powerful. I'm obsessed with this episode.
So good. I know. I'm feeling into this. I'm like, bing, 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 bing.
Yes. Wow. Yeah. Okay. Hell yes. Feeling the fire. Okay. So are there any other tips you want to give with channeling ideas into reality, or shall we tee people up to go off and send it?
Let's tee them up.
Okay. So I want you guys to really feel into what resonated with you, whatever notes you took, whatever pings you were getting, and to have this be an invitation to honestly reset the way that you relate to and engage with ideas and inspiration in your life, and to start to play in this reality where just the mere presence of the inspiration, the idea, the intuitive hit is proof that you are ready to freaking rock and roll, and that there is someone, if you will, of this energetic entity that is so excited to move through you. And what an honor it is to be a vessel that gets chosen for ideas, that gets chosen for inspiration to run through. And ultimately, we are really in this service to the consciousness, to the collective, to the universe that is exploring itself through us. And that first step is to let your ears perk up at the idea and to just take even the tiniest little step forward that is going to unfold such a beautiful process that just keeps on getting better and better and climbing to higher and higher heights. So, anything else you want to add there?
Well, I have something else at the end that I'll add, not connected to that. Do you want me to say that now?
Yes.
Oh, you seemed like you were going to keep popping off. I was here for it. I was like, yes.
No, it suddenly stopped. So that's why I handed it over to you. The channel is done.
The idea was like, we are done. Guys, we are sharing all this wisdom as in real time. We are literally connecting with our own idea of what we're creating next in the world of Ohm. And we will leave a link below for you guys to get on the insider, like first dibs knowledge on everything that we'll release about what is to come. And you'll be hearing us chat about it from here and there in the episodes and on our Instagram. So definitely follow us on social media just so that you have all the know. And also click the link below, put your email, and then we'll have you on an email list where we will continuously update you on what it is we are sharing in terms of this beautiful idea and what we are creating next in the world of Ohm, because it may just be the thing that is specifically for you, which I'm freaking pumped about. So that will be all for today. Did you have any last thoughts that you wanted to touch on?
Nope. That's it.
Any ideas? No, the channel is closed. All right, guys.
And we're done.
We love you so much. And thank you so much for listening to this. Go tune into the idea as an entity and have fun with this. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.